Something huge could be brewing for the Philadelphia 76ers ahead of the NBA draft. You look at the timeline on Twitter, day after day, the player named Trey Johnson is plugged to this Philadelphia 76ers team more and more, it seems like. And a lot of these are, scouts, analysts, kind of their opinions, their thoughts on the situation, not concrete ideas of whether or not that this player will fall to the Philadelphia 76ers or go to the 76ers at number 3 overall. But his name is being thrown around more and more. VJ Edgecombe we've heard less and less of. Ace Bailey, I think we're hearing about the same. But Trey Johnson's name has been thrown into the mix by credible analysts, credible scouts as well out there on the market, in the media, that have just been, infatuated, for lack of a better term, with his potential fit with the Philadelphia 76ers. Trey Johnson, the freshman guard out of the University of Texas. I know a lot of people would be upset with that pick just due to the overall other needs on the roster. But my big picture kind of takeaway with this is you look at the NBA Finals right now. Depth is the most important thing, I think, in this series, and why these two teams have made it with the Pacers and the Thunder. And you look at the onslaught of guards that both teams are able to roll out there on a nightly basis with SGA, Alex Caruso, Cason Wallace, Jalen Williams, all with the Thunder. You look at Andrew Nembhard, you look at Tyrese Halliburton, you look at TJ McConnell. You need multiple guards and multiple highly skilled guards to be able to go out there and contend at this highest level. And I know the big, kind of backdrop with this Philadelphia 76ers team is they already have a nice group core of young guards with Jared McCain, Tyrese Maxey, and Quentin Grimes. But this is a guard-driven league, and having the ability to get another guy, whether it's at 3 or trading back, looks like it could be a more logical scenario for the Philadelphia 76ers instead of drafting a guy like an Ace Bailey who might be more of a project, might be more, of that pure wing type of player rather than a go-to type of scoring guard. Because you look at whether it's Tyrese Halliburton or Andrew Nembhard, the ability to have one or two of those guys go out there and hit shots in the clutch. SGA and Jalen Williams, obviously different players than what the Philadelphia 76ers have in their backcourt right now. But the more you look at this situation, the more I look at it with a kind of an open mind that Trey Johnson might actually be, an ideal fit here for the Philadelphia 76ers at number 3. You look at Raphael Barlo. If you don't follow him already, follow him. He's one of the more respected guys out there in the media covering the NBA draft all over Twitter. But he was doing kind of a Q&A the other day on the timeline, and it caught my eye, and someone goes, thoughts on Trey's fit in Philly? And that's Trey Johnson, the freshman guard out of Texas. And he goes, if I'm Philly, I'm taking Trey at number 3. Turns off notifications. But that would be kind of an eye-opening selection. I think the closer we get, the more people are getting on board with this potentially being Ace Bailey. But the name Trey Johnson has been thrown around there, and people say, well, if they take Trey Johnson, it's going to be, at 5 or at 7 in a trade down type of spot. There are people in this draft that think Trey Johnson actually might be the 3rd best overall player, and it does, make sense as well. When you look kind of long-term at this guy and his potential and what he did in just his freshman year at the University of Texas, basically put that team on his shoulders and carried them to the NCAA tournament. He is a worthy prospect here at number 3, and I've been Team Ace for most of this process. But if they do walk away from this draft with Trey Johnson, I'm not gonna look twice about it. I think it could be a good mix because you kind of learn throughout this NBA season how much this depth matters. You even look at a team like the Celtics and what they did over last season with a guy like Peyton Pritchard coming off the bench. You need guys like Trey Johnson, and I know it's at number 3. Ideally, you're going to want to have a guy who's in your starting lineup. But if he's out there playing 28 to 32 minutes a night and getting respectable time, and you're able to get the most out of his skill set, I don't know why you would blink an eye at getting a guy who's this talented as a shooter, this talented as a scorer. Now, with Raphael's tweet here as well, it kind of hints at the fact that that would be a questionable decision, a decision that gets scrutinized potentially. But also, I could see this being a Daryl Morey type of selection. I know we've talked about Trey Johnson a lot on this show, but watching the NBA Finals and watching these teams throughout the course of the playoffs, the depth matters, I think, now more than ever, and is why we're seeing these teams get here. And you need to be able to have these guys continuously rolling in on these cheap contracts. That's why the Thunder are set up to have such long-term success, because they're going to be able to pay these top 2 or 3 guys, but they're not going to have to worry about retaining the role players. You look at the 76ers, they need this next kind of group, this next core to continue to roll over. And my co-host Sean Bernard has mentioned a couple times as well, I've heard him say, like, you look at the 76ers right now, and sure, they're still in ideally a period of time where they can go out there and compete, and Joel Embiid and Paul George have a bounce back season next year, and wide open Eastern Conference, I think you could say, next season, potentially make a run. But also they're looking to get to this next stage of the era of Philadelphia 76ers basketball. And that could be headlined by Trey Johnson, Tyrese Maxey, Jared McCain, and Quentin Grimes potentially. And I know that's a bunch of guards, but that's what you need in today's NBA. You need guys to be able to put the ball in the basket, to be able to score the ball. The defense is definitely going to be a question mark here if they do wind up selecting him, but Quentin Grimes, I think, can make up for that. We'll see how dug in Trey Johnson can be on the defensive end, but the more I look at this scenario, the more ideal I think it could be, and the less surprised I'm going to be if this winds up happening. You look at another tweet here from Raphael, kind of going off his point of taking Trey Johnson at 3. He's basically saying, take Trey, trust that Justin Edwards played from last season, who, keep in mind, was once the number 1 recruit in the country. You get him as an undrafted free agent out of Kentucky last year, and if Embiid and PG are healthy, there's plenty of shooting around them with guys like Tyrese Maxey, with guys like Quentin Grimes and Jared McCain. And for him to say, I think Trey is similar to Devin Booker, where 3-point shooter, good pull-up shooter, good passer sneakily. His playmaking wasn't on display as much because he was asked to score the ball a ton, and a little bit more athletic than people think. Why would you pass up on a player like that? Sure, the screaming need might be more at wing, but if you're also looking at the screaming need side of things, I think the biggest thing with Ace Bailey is he might not be ready necessarily to play from day one at the next level. So that kind of goes back to Trey Johnson has that scoring ability from day one to slide in right at the guard spot. Ace Bailey's scoring prowess might be a little bit higher upside long term, but day one from the NBA, that's what most people are kind of alluding to, that he's not going to be ready there. And I think that situation works well in itself as well, where he's not going to be forced to compete and do stuff right away with a guy like Paul George necessarily right in front of him still. So when you look at the big picture kind of thing, it's, all right, Trey Johnson maybe helps you win in the short term and long term better. Ace Bailey might just be that overall long-term best player, best prospect type of thing. So it's kind of pick your poison with what you would want from that. But I really like what Raphael Barlo is saying here. And, let's continue to remind ourselves what we got with Justin Edwards, what we most likely have with Quentin Grimes coming back, how good Jared McCain was in flashes last year before his injury. Tyrese Maxey, an up-and-down season last year, but he's a star guard in the NBA in its own right. You're able to add another scoring guard to the mix here. A guy I think goes out and gets you 13, 14 points per game next year as a rookie, shoots the ball really well surrounding Joel Embiid, and is able to play off of Tyrese Maxey and Jared McCain. That's a very intriguing offensive lineup. It's going to have some defensive efficiencies, some defensive woes, but maybe you're able to plug some of those holes with some cheap guys in free agency that are able to buy in on that side of the ball. Paul George, I think even one thing that he did not really well last year, but if you're going to point to some positives from last year, his effort on the defensive end was still there, I think. So this is a team that, obviously, with the number 3 pick, there's going to be a lot of rumors. I think the Sixers are the most rumored team to trade back, to potentially trade the pick entirely for a star player. Sixers have been rumored a ton, but you look at just one graphic of Trey Johnson real quickly and just what he was able to do last year as a freshman in the SEC, one of the best conferences we've seen in college basketball history last year, shooting 40% from 3-point range, just under 20 points per game, only 2.7 assists, but as we said, he was asked to be the main scoring guy on that roster. You might see more flashes of playmaking out of him at the NBA level than you necessarily did last year in college with the better players around him. But, it's becoming more and more a likely scenario, I think, of happening, not as far-fetched as we once thought, and where it was like, all right, this is a Ace Bailey, VJ Edgecombe. I think right now it's more so an Ace Bailey, Trey Johnson type of selection. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below after watching the NBA Finals and throughout the NBA playoffs, the culmination of guard talent on both of these rosters and just being able to have this depth. I think that's an intriguing thing for the Philadelphia 76ers to potentially look at going forward. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. As always, please drop a like, please drop a subscribe. We'll talk next time here on Sixers Digest.